Sarah huddled under the thin awning of a closed coffee shop in downtown St. Louis, trying to escape the relentless September rain. 3 months on the streets had taught her which doorways offered the best shelter, but tonight's unexpected downpour had caught her unprepared. Her weathered backpack containing everything she owned was tucked protectively against her chest as rainwater pooled around her worn sneakers. 2 blocks away, Joyce Meyer sat in her parked car, reviewing notes for tomorrow's conference. The windshield wipers worked furiously against the downpour as she highlighted key passages in her Bible. Looking up momentarily, she noticed a solitary figure huddled in a doorway. Something about the woman's posture, a mixture of dignity and desperation, caught Joyce's attention. "Lord, I was just reading about being mindful to be a blessing," Joyce whispered, remembering the scripture from Galatians she'd been studying. Without hesitation, she reached for her umbrella and stepped out into the rain. The woman didn't notice Joyce's approach, her eyes fixed on a small photograph she held carefully away from the rain. "Excuse me," Joyce said gently, extending her umbrella to cover them both. "Would you like to join me for some coffee? There's a place around the corner that's still open." Sarah looked up, startled by the kindness in the stranger's eyes. She didn't recognize the famous Bible teacher standing before her. "I don't have any money," she admitted, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "That's not a problem at all," Joyce replied with a warm smile. "I'm Joyce, and I'd appreciate the company." In the small, nearly empty cafe, Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around the warm mug. The barista had given them a curious glance, a well-dressed woman and her disheveled companion, but Joyce's confident smile had silenced any questions. "I haven't had hot coffee in weeks," Sarah confessed, taking a careful sip. "Thank you." Joyce nodded, noticing how Sarah had selected the cheapest item on the menu despite being told she could order anything. "I'm speaking at a conference tomorrow," Joyce explained. "About finding purpose even in our darkest moments." Sarah's eyes flickered with interest. "I could use some of that wisdom right about now." As they talked, Sarah gradually revealed pieces of her story, a series of unfortunate events beginning with medical bills she couldn't pay, followed by eviction, and finally, homelessness. Despite everything, there was a quiet resilience in her voice that moved Joyce deeply. When the cafe began closing, Joyce hesitated. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" Sarah looked toward the window where rain continued to fall. "I'll manage," she said with practiced stoicism. "I always do." The next morning dawned clear and bright, washing away evidence of the previous night's storm. Joyce arrived early at the convention center, her mind still on Sarah. During her morning prayer, she felt a clear prompting that their meeting hadn't been coincidental. Meanwhile, Sarah woke stiff and damp in the recessed doorway of a bank. The coffee and conversation from the night before had warmed her spirit, but reality quickly reasserted itself as she gathered her meager belongings. The kind woman Joyce had pressed a business card into her hand before they parted, inviting her to the day's conference. "As if I could walk into a place like that," Sarah murmured, but she tucked the card carefully into her pocket nonetheless. Hours later, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and the promise of indoor heating, Sarah found herself standing outside the convention center. Attendees in neat clothing streamed past her, some casting sideways glances at her appearance. She nearly turned away when a security guard approached. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his tone professional but wary. Sarah's hand closed around the business card in her pocket. "I was invited by Joyce Meyer," she said, the words sounding implausible even to her own ears. The guard's expression changed. "Are you Sarah?" When she nodded, surprised, he continued, "Ms. Meyer left instructions. Please follow me. Bewildered, Sarah was led not to the main hall, but to a private room where a change of clothes, toiletries, and a hot meal awaited. A note propped against the mirror read simply, "Everyone deserves dignity. Join us when you're ready. Joyce." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she showered for the first time in weeks. The simple act of cleanliness, of being treated with respect, overwhelmed her. When Sarah finally entered the conference hall, Joyce was midway through her talk. Sometimes, God places people in our path, not by accident, but by divine appointment, Joyce was saying. Last night, I met someone who reminded me that kindness isn't just something we do, it's who we're called to be. From her seat in the back row, Sarah listened, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. As the conference broke for lunch, Joyce scanned the crowd, searching for Sarah. When she spotted her in the back row, a smile spread across her face. Making her way through well-wishers and attendees seeking autographs, Joyce finally reached Sarah. "You came," Joyce said warmly, embracing her as though they were old friends. Sarah nodded, still overwhelmed. "I didn't expect any of this." "Come with me," Joyce said, guiding her toward a private meeting room where several staff members waited. "I'd like you to meet some people from Hand of Hope." Over the next hour, Sarah learned about Joyce Meyer Ministries' outreach program. They explained their work with inner-city communities, helping the homeless, disadvantaged youth, and others in need. As they talked, Sarah found herself sharing ideas based on her own experiences, insights about what truly helped people in her situation versus what merely looked good on paper. "You understand this world in a way most of our team doesn't," said David Meyer, the CEO of Hand of Hope. "We need that perspective." Joyce leaned forward. "Sarah, would you consider joining our team? Not as a charity case, but because you have something valuable to offer." Sarah stared in disbelief. "But I don't have a home, or proper clothes, or—" "Those are logistics," Joyce interrupted gently. "What you have is far more valuable authentic experience and a heart that hasn't been hardened by hardship." For the first time in months, hope flickered in Sarah's chest, not just for temporary relief, but for genuine transformation. 3 months later, Sarah stood before a small group of formerly homeless individuals in a community center in downtown St. Louis. Her appearance had changed dramatically: clean clothes, healthy complexion, confident posture, but the most significant transformation was in her eyes, which now shone with purpose. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," she told the group, "to have people look through you rather than at you. But I also know that a single act of kindness can be the turning point." As the newly appointed coordinator for Hand of Hope's Inner City Outreach program, Sarah had developed initiatives specifically tailored to those experiencing homelessness. Her approach combined practical assistance with dignity-affirming support lessons learned from her own experience and from Joyce's mentorship. In her modest apartment, provided initially through the ministry but now maintained through her salary, Sarah kept a small framed photo on her nightstand. It showed her and Joyce serving meals at a shelter, both women beaming with identical expressions of joy. That evening, as Sarah prepared for a meeting with city officials about expanding their homeless services, her phone rang. Joyce's name appeared on the screen. "I just wanted to check in," Joyce said when Sarah answered. "The board reviewed your proposal. They're impressed, Sarah. We're approving the full funding." Sarah sank onto her couch, overwhelmed with gratitude. "I never imagined any of this was possible." "That's the thing about God's plans," Joyce replied. "They're always bigger than what we can imagine for ourselves." 1 year to the day after their first meeting, Sarah and Joyce stood together outside a newly renovated building. A sign above the entrance read, New Beginnings Transitional Housing. What had once been an abandoned hotel was now a facility designed to help people transition from homelessness to stable housing and employment. "Ready?" Joyce asked, handing Sarah the ceremonial scissors for the ribbon cutting. Sarah nodded, addressing the gathered crowd. "A year ago, I was homeless, sheltering from the rain in a doorway not far from here. A stranger who became a friend and mentor offered me coffee and conversation. That simple act of kindness was the first step on a journey that brings us here today." As Sarah spoke, several current residents of the program stood nearby, their faces reflecting hope and determination. Each had been personally selected by Sarah, who recognized in them the same resilience she had once shown. "This center isn't just about providing shelter," Sarah continued. "It's about restoring dignity and purpose. Everyone who comes through these doors has value and potential, just waiting to be recognized." After the ceremony, as volunteers guided visitors through tours of the facility, Joyce pulled Sarah aside. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Joyce asked. "When I asked if you wanted anything else from the cafe?" Sarah smiled, remembering. "I said I didn't want to take advantage of your kindness." "And I told you that kindness isn't meant to be hoarded, it's meant to be passed on," Joyce finished. "Look at how beautifully you've done that." As they watched a young mother and her child being welcomed into the center, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a simple cup of coffee. One act of kindness had not only changed her life, but was now changing countless others. "The most powerful thing we can do," Sarah said softly, "is to see people, really see them, when the rest of the world has looked away." Joyce nodded, squeezing Sarah's hand. "That's not just kindness," she said. "That's love in action." Together, they walked into the building, ready to welcome those who, like Sarah once was, were waiting for someone to notice them in the rain. Sometimes, the most profound changes in our lives begin with the smallest moments of connection. Sarah and Joyce's story reminds us that we're all just one act of kindness away from transformation, whether we're the ones extending our hand or the ones reaching out to take it. In a world that often rushes past the struggling and the broken, the courage to stop, to see, and to act can ripple outward in ways we may never fully comprehend. Each of us holds this power, the power to change a life with nothing more than our attention and compassion. Perhaps there's someone in your world right now who simply needs to be seen. Someone whose potential lies dormant, waiting for that single moment of recognition that says, "You matter." Your story isn't over yet. The beauty of kindness is that it costs us so little, yet offers immeasurable returns. Joyce didn't need wealth or special resources to change Sarah's life. She simply needed to follow that gentle prompting to reach out. And in doing so, she didn't just help one woman. She sparked a movement that would eventually shelter and restore hundreds. As you go about your day, remember, the person you pass on the street, avoid eye contact with, or hurry past. They carry within them the same complexity of hopes, dreams, and potential that you do. Your acknowledgement, your smile, your moment of genuine connection might be the turning point in their story. Because in the end, it's not the grand gestures that heal our broken world. It's the million small kindnesses we extend to one another, day after day, that truly transform lives. If this story touched your heart today, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a life-changing act of kindness, either as the giver or receiver? Share your story with our community, and if you believe in the power of stories to inspire change, please consider subscribing to our channel. Each week, we bring you authentic narratives that remind us of our shared humanity and the extraordinary impact of ordinary compassion. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for spending this time with us today. Your presence and attention are what make these stories worth sharing.